My name's Eliza, I'm 34, and last week I was invited to what my mother called a small family dinner. But when I walked through that door I froze. There were 81 people packed inside, and a giant banner that read, "Welcome, baby." That night, I discovered a truth I never saw coming. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more real family drama and emotional courage stories. I still remember the text. It came late on a Wednesday night, when I was curled up on the couch with a blanket, scrolling through the weather app to see if the snow was coming. A short, almost careless message from my mom. Come by Saturday. Small family dinner. 6 o'clock. No smiley faces. No extra details. Just that. At first, I didn't think much of it. My mom had always been blunt with her texts, the kind of woman who refused to waste extra words. But the phrase small family dinner felt off. Our family rarely did small. There was always an uncle or a cousin or a neighbor dropping in. And somehow what started as 4 people at the table grew into 10. So the word small caught my attention, like it had been chosen deliberately. I stared at my phone a little too long, weighing whether to reply right away or wait until morning. I ended up sending back a quick, "Sure, see you then." Simple. Polite. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was being left unsaid. The next morning as I made coffee, I thought about the last family dinner I had been to. It was 2 years ago, after Dad's birthday. That night had ended in raised voices, my brother storming out, and me crying in the driveway because I hated the way everyone pretended afterward that nothing happened. So maybe small meant controlled. Maybe Mom just wanted peace. Maybe this time, she wanted to keep things quiet, avoid drama. Still, I found myself replaying the wording over and over. I even called my friend Karen during lunch break and read her the message. "That's weird," she said, chewing her salad on the other end. "Your mom doesn't do small dinners." "Think it's a setup?" "A setup for what?" I asked, laughing nervously. "I don't know. Maybe she wants to talk to you about something. Or maybe she's got a surprise." Her voice had that tone, half teasing, half serious, and it stuck in my head for the rest of the day. By Friday evening, I had convinced myself it was nothing. Just a plain dinner. Still, when I opened my closet to pick something to wear, I caught myself second-guessing. Should I dress casual, like jeans and a sweater? Or was this one of those casual dinners that really meant business casual with earrings and nice boots? I pulled out a navy dress I hadn't worn in months. Simple but neat. The kind of outfit that said, "I'm making an effort but I didn't try too hard." As I hung it on the closet door, a wave of unease hit me again. Why was I treating this like an event? Why did my hands feel shaky, like I was about to walk into something I couldn't quite name? Saturday came cold and gray. The kind of day where the clouds felt heavy enough to press down on your shoulders. I drove the 20 minutes to my parents' house, passing familiar landmarks. The grocery store where Dad used to buy lottery tickets, the diner where I had my first job, the gas station where I once ran out of fuel at midnight. Each place carried memories, some warm, some sharp, and all of them blended into a quiet reminder. This town had never really changed, but I had. When I turned down their street, I slowed. There were more cars than I expected. A line of them parked along the curb, bumper to bumper, stretching all the way down toward the cul-de-sac. My first thought was practical. Maybe a neighbor was throwing a party. But as I pulled closer, my chest tightened. I recognized the minivan my aunt drove. And the old red truck my cousin Ryan never let anyone borrow. I parked half a block away and sat in the driver's seat for a moment, gripping the wheel. The word small echoed in my mind like a cruel joke. I walked up the sidewalk, heels crunching on leftover rock salt, and noticed the faint sound of music coming from inside. Not the soft hum of background dinner tunes, but louder, upbeat songs. The kind you'd play at a gathering. A celebration. At the front door I paused. Through the glass panel, I caught sight of movement. Too much movement. People walking past in groups, voices overlapping. Laughter. A flash of balloons. My hand froze on the doorknob. I told myself it was fine. That maybe Mom had simply invited a few more people last minute. That she'd explain. That it wasn't what it looked like. But the knot in my stomach only pulled tighter. Inside my purse, my phone buzzed. A text from Karen. "Good luck at dinner. Call me after. I'm dying to hear how it goes. I almost laughed at the timing. If only she knew how my pulse was racing right then. How badly I wanted to climb back into my car and drive away before anyone saw me. But I couldn't. Not without answers. I took a deep breath, straightened the navy dress, and opened the door. The warmth hit me first, the blast of heat and noise as dozens of voices filled the entryway. Then the smell, pot roast, mashed potatoes, casseroles, the unmistakable scent of Mom's baking. But none of that mattered. Not when my eyes landed on what was hanging above the living room archway. A massive white banner, stretching almost wall to wall. In bold letters, "Welcome, baby." And beneath it, 80-something faces turning toward me, clapping, smiling, as if I had just walked into a surprise meant for me. Except I knew, with a sinking heaviness, it wasn't. That moment burned into me, every detail etched so deep I can still feel it now. The way my aunt waved like she hadn't seen me in years. The way the music kept playing as though this was normal. The way my mother appeared in the kitchen doorway, her expression unreadable. I stood frozen, still holding the doorknob, trying to piece together what small family dinner had just turned into. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I had no idea what kind of game my family was really playing. The room erupted the moment I stepped past the doorway. Applause. Whistles. That strange kind of cheer you expect at a sporting event, not in your mother's living room. Dozens of hands clapping together, smiles spreading across faces I hadn't seen in months, maybe years. I froze in place. My fingers clenched the strap of my purse, so tightly it dug into my shoulder. Every instinct told me to back up, to run before the wave of attention swallowed me whole. But I couldn't move. Someone shouted my name, too loudly, too cheerfully. "Eliza! You made it!" It was Aunt Brenda, weaving her way through the crowd, wearing a cardigan with embroidered flowers that looked more like weeds. She wrapped me in a hug before I could react. Her perfume was strong, sharp, the kind that lingers long after someone walks away. "We weren't sure you'd come," she said into my ear. "Oh, this is just perfect. Just perfect." Perfect? Nothing about this was perfect. I glanced over her shoulder, my eyes searching. The banner stretched across the far wall like a billboard I couldn't ignore. "Welcome, baby." The exclamation point mocked me. And below it, clusters of relatives gathered in little circles, sipping drinks, balancing plates of food, whispering behind cupped hands. Small family dinner. My mother had said. This wasn't dinner. This wasn't small. This was a circus. The sound of balloons squeaking caught my attention. Two kids I barely recognized, maybe cousins' children, were batting pastel-colored balloons back and forth near the staircase. They laughed, chasing each other, completely oblivious to the tension that had already settled in my chest like a stone. I forced myself to smile at Aunt Brenda, but it felt stiff, unnatural. "Yeah, I made it," I murmured. My throat was dry. Before I could step farther inside, Uncle Richard appeared with his booming voice, clapping me on the back like I was a soldier returning from battle. "There she is. We didn't think you'd show up, Eliza. You're late." "I wasn't told there was a start time," I replied quickly, the words sharper than I intended. He laughed, not catching, or maybe ignoring, the edge in my tone. "Well, you're here now. That's what matters. Come on, grab a plate. There's plenty of food." Food. My stomach churned at the thought. I took a slow step inside, my eyes scanning the crowd. Faces blurred together, familiar and unfamiliar all at once. Neighbors, old friends of the family, even people I couldn't put names to anymore. How many had my mother invited? 50? 60? More. Then I saw him. Across the room near the kitchen doorway stood my partner, James. He was laughing with a group, holding a drink, his arm brushing against a woman's shoulder as though it belonged there. She was younger than me, with long blonde hair that looked like it had been styled just for tonight. The two of them leaned close, talking, smiling, oblivious to the fact that I had just walked in. My chest tightened, my feet rooted to the carpet. I wanted to march over, to demand answers, but the crowd pressed too close, cutting off my path. And truthfully, I wasn't ready, not yet. My mother appeared suddenly, moving briskly through the crowd. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Eliza," she said softly, as if nothing about this was unusual. She kissed my cheek, her hand pressing against my arm with forced warmth. So glad you could make it. I pulled back, searching her face. Mom, what is this? My voice was quiet but sharp. Her smile never wavered. It's a celebration, she replied simply, almost rehearsed. You'll understand soon. Before I could ask more, someone called her name, and she slipped away, leaving me standing there with 1,000 questions and no answers. The room felt too hot, the air thick with chatter and the clinking of glasses. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years approached, already a little tipsy, waving a half-empty cup. Eliza, look at you, girl. Doesn't this feel like old times? I managed a thin smile. Something like that. He didn't notice my tone, launching into a story about his new job, his new truck, his new girlfriend. I nodded absently, my eyes drifting back to James across the room. Every laugh he shared with that woman felt like a blade twisting deeper into my chest. I excused myself from the conversation, pretending I needed a drink. I slipped through the crowd, weaving between relatives, overhearing snippets of conversations I wasn't meant to hear. So happy for them, it's about time. She doesn't know yet, does she? Can you believe the turnout? 81 people. Each fragment only tightened the knot in my stomach. I reached the kitchen table, cluttered with bowls of chips, plates of cookies, pitchers of punch. I grabbed a cup just to keep my hands busy. My reflection in the punch bowl startled me, my face pale, my eyes wide, the navy dress suddenly feeling like a costume on the wrong stage. Nice dress, a voice said behind me. I turned to see cousin Marlene, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed. Her smile was sly, knowing. Did you dress up for the occasion? Or was that just luck? What occasion? I asked flatly. Her smile widened, but she didn't answer. She just raised her cup, clinked it against mine, and walked away, leaving the question hanging in the air. I drifted back toward the living room, keeping to the edges unnoticed. The crowd buzzed with energy, laughter rising in waves. Yet every sound grated against me, each clap, each cheer, each murmur of baby cutting deeper. And then suddenly silence. Someone tapped a glass with a spoon. All heads turned toward the center of the room. My heart pounded as James stepped forward, his hand resting lightly on the blonde woman's back. He smiled, scanning the crowd. Thank you all for being here tonight. It means the world to us. Us. The word echoed in my ears, drowning out the rest of the noise. I stood frozen, the crowd shifting to give them space. James looked so at ease, so comfortable, as though he had rehearsed this moment for weeks. The woman beside him blushed, her hand brushing against his. The guests clapped, cheered, some even whistled. The banner loomed overhead, bold and undeniable. Welcome, baby. And I, standing on the sidelines, realized with a sickening clarity. I was the only one who hadn't been let in on the secret. I didn't speak. I didn't move. The weight of 81 eyes didn't fall on me. They were all fixed on them. James. The woman. The celebration. Yet inside me something cracked. A quiet, invisible break that no one in that room noticed. I gripped my cup tighter, forcing myself to stand tall. My mind was already racing, piecing together every look, every whisper, every lie. The shocking welcome wasn't for me. It was the unveiling of a betrayal that had been building for far longer than I realized. And as the applause roared around me, I promised myself one thing. This wasn't the end of my story. This was only the beginning. The room was still ringing with the last round of applause, my pulse quickening with every clap that died down. I stood frozen, staring at the giant banner that still mocked me with its cheerful letters. Welcome, baby. My eyes kept drifting between the banner and the crowd, as though if I looked hard enough, the words would rearrange themselves into something less humiliating. But then the MC, a cousin I barely remembered from childhood, raised his microphone again, and announced something that sent another jolt through my chest. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. But this isn't just a dinner. This evening is also about celebrating a new chapter, an engagement that's been months in the making. The crowd cheered, whistles piercing the air. I blinked rapidly, convinced I'd misheard him. An engagement? Whose? My gaze darted across the room, desperate for answers. Then I saw him. Daniel. My Daniel, or at least, the man I thought was mine. He stepped forward into the spotlight, dressed in a sharp navy suit I had never seen before, looking as though he had rehearsed for this very moment. My stomach clenched as he reached for a woman's hand. A woman who was definitely not me. Her name, I learned a moment later, was Lily. She was stunning in a silver dress that shimmered under the lights, her long hair cascading in perfect waves down her back. And she looked at Daniel with a kind of intimacy that cut through me like glass. He didn't flinch. He didn't hesitate. He simply intertwined his fingers with hers as if it had always been that way. I must have stopped breathing because my chest burned, and I had to grab the edge of a nearby table just to steady myself. The applause was deafening now, the crowd clapping, laughing, cheering for the couple who stood at the center of it all. My first thought was disbelief. Maybe it was some kind of cruel joke. Maybe they were just announcing someone else's engagement, and this was all a misunderstanding. But then Daniel raised his voice over the cheering crowd, his smile wide, his arm proudly around Lily's waist. Yes, it's true. Lily and I are engaged. We wanted this moment to be a surprise for everyone, and what better way than to celebrate it with family? Family. The word twisted in my gut. He wasn't just addressing strangers. He was addressing my family, people who had invited me under the pretense of a small dinner, only for me to walk into this ambush. I forced myself to breathe, to keep my face neutral even as my insides churned. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but my legs refused to move. I was rooted to the spot, drowning in betrayal. Daniel's mother, Gloria, took the microphone next, her voice syrupy sweet but sharp enough to slice through the room. "We are so thrilled to finally welcome Lily into the family," she gushed. "She is everything we could have hoped for, Daniel, and more." Her gaze landed on me briefly as she said, "And more," her eyes narrowing ever so slightly, as though I were an unwanted guest at my own execution. My cheeks burned, but I didn't drop her stare. Not yet. Then came the speeches. One after another, relatives stood up to toast the happy couple, recounting stories I had never heard before. Weekends at the lake, holidays spent together, secret dates that apparently weren't so secret. My mind reeled. How long had this been going on? How many lies had Daniel fed me while planning this spectacle with someone else? I remembered the late-night calls he had brushed off as work emergencies. The weekends he claimed he was too exhausted to see me. The vague excuses that had pricked at me like tiny needles, but never drew enough blood to make me stop believing in him. All of it, I realized now, had been a carefully constructed illusion. The long-con engagement, that's what this was. A performance designed not just to deceive me, but to humiliate me, to erase me from the narrative entirely. I must have looked pale, because my Aunt Ruth suddenly appeared at my side, her hand gently brushing my arm. "Eliza, honey, are you okay?" she whispered. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I'm fine," I lied. Her brow furrowed, clearly unconvinced, but she said nothing more. Instead, she gave my hand a squeeze, the kind that carried more meaning than words ever could. I clung to that small gesture like a lifeline. But just as quickly as she had appeared, Ruth was pulled into a conversation with another relative, leaving me adrift again in the sea of celebration. Daniel and Lily moved through the crowd like royalty, receiving hugs and congratulations, their laughter ringing out like victory bells. I couldn't help but notice the way he looked at her. Genuine, warm, the kind of look he had once reserved for me. A memory flashed in my mind. Daniel kneeling in my living room months ago, not with a ring, but with promises. "You're my future, Eliza," he had said. "Just wait a little longer. I want it to be perfect when I ask you." The cruelty of it made my stomach twist. That perfect proposal he had spoken of? It was happening right now in front of me, but with someone else. I needed answers. And so, summoning every ounce of courage I had left, I maneuvered through the crowd until I stood a few feet away from him. He saw me then, his smile faltering for just a split second before he masked it with charm. "Eliza," he said smoothly, as though I were just another guest. "I'm glad you could make it." I wanted to slap the smugness off his face, but instead I kept my voice steady. "Glad I could make it? Daniel, what is this?" He glanced around, lowering his voice. "Not here. We'll talk later." "No," I said firmly. "We'll talk now." Lily tilted her head, her expression curious but not threatened. Is everything okay? Daniel gave her a reassuring smile. Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just an old friend saying hello. Old friend. The words hit harder than I expected. My chest tightened, and for a moment I thought I might actually collapse. But I steadied myself, unwilling to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. Old friend. I repeated, my voice sharp. That's what I am now. Lily's eyes flickered between us, confusion creasing her forehead. But before she could press further, someone else pulled her aside. Eager for a photo with the bride-to-be, Daniel seized the opportunity to grab my elbow and steer me toward a quieter corner of the room. The moment we were out of earshot, I yanked my arm free. How long? I demanded. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Eliza, this isn't the time. How long? I snapped. His jaw tightened. A year. Maybe more. The words landed like stones in my chest. A year. That meant every date we had, every kiss, every whispered promise during that time had been a lie. He had been building this engagement with Lily while stringing me along. Why? My voice cracked despite my best efforts to stay strong. Why would you do this to me? His eyes softened slightly, though I knew better than to believe it was real. I didn't mean to hurt you. I wasn't sure about us. And then Lily came along, and everything fell into place. Fell into place? I repeated, my voice trembling with fury. So I was just what? A placeholder until she showed up? He looked away, unable to answer. The silence between us was deafening. Finally he muttered, You should go, Eliza. This isn't your night. I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow even to my own ears. You're right, Daniel. It's not my night. It never was. I turned to leave, but before I could, I felt dozens of eyes on me again. Some sympathetic, others judgmental, a few openly amused. Word had spread quickly. People whispering, glancing, piecing together the truth of who I was in this twisted story. For a moment, I considered slipping out quietly, vanishing before anyone could corner me with pity or gossip. But then another thought struck me. Why should I let them write the ending for me? So instead of retreating, I straightened my shoulders, lifted my chin, and walked back into the center of the room. The applause had died down by then, replaced by the chatter of guests mingling. But my entrance drew eyes again, and for once, I didn't shy away from the attention. I didn't make a scene. I didn't scream or throw a glass of wine in anyone's face. But I made sure Daniel saw me, saw the strength in my posture, the defiance in my gaze. If this night was meant to break me, I would not give him or his family the satisfaction. Not yet. The air was heavy, thick with unspoken questions and hushed gossip. I stood in the center of the room, every eye on me, though not a soul dared to speak aloud. For a fleeting moment, I considered slipping away into the shadows again, letting this circus play out without me. But something inside me hardened. Why should I shrink? Why should I be the one to hide, when it was Daniel who had spun this elaborate lie, and his family who had played along with it? I drew a breath so deep I could feel it rattle through my ribs. Then, without giving myself a chance to reconsider, I reached for the microphone still resting on the stand near the band. My fingers trembled, but I gripped it tightly, the metal cool against my skin. A few heads turned immediately, curious. Others froze mid-conversation as my voice, soft but steady, cut through the low hum. May I have a moment? The chatter died almost instantly. The band members exchanged glances, but quietly set their instruments aside. Even the servers paused in their tracks, trays hovering in midair. The silence that followed was the kind you could feel pressing against your ears, heavy and expectant. I forced a small smile, though my throat was dry. I know tonight is meant to celebrate love, family, and new beginnings. But sometimes, the truth deserves a place at the table too. A ripple ran through the room, soft gasps, muffled whispers. My chest thudded like a drum, but I didn't back down. I could see Daniel at the far end, his jaw tightening, his hand tightening protectively around Lily's. His mother, Gloria, whispered something into the ear of an aunt. Her lips pulled into a thin, annoyed line. But no one stopped me. I cleared my throat and spoke again, louder this time, my voice steadier. My name is Eliza. Some of you may not know me well, but I'm not exactly a stranger to this family. In fact, until very recently, I believed I was part of it. I was with Daniel for almost 3 years. 3 years of birthdays, holidays, and promises. A murmur rippled through the crowd, louder this time. My words had landed. Daniel moved as though to intervene, but I raised a hand sharply. You'll have your chance, Daniel. But tonight I've earned mine. His steps faltered. He stopped glaring, but he didn't advance. I let the silence linger just long enough to sting before continuing. For months, I believed we had a future together. He told me to be patient, that he wanted our engagement to be perfect. I waited. I trusted. And all the while this. I gestured toward Lily, her sparkling dress, the grand decorations, the towering banner, was being prepared behind my back. A gasp escaped from somewhere in the crowd. A cousin muttered, "She's serious?" Another voice answered, "She must be. Look at her." I steadied my breath and kept my tone calm, almost conversational, though inside I was burning. I'm not here to embarrass anyone. I don't want pity. I don't even want revenge. What I want, what I need, is for the truth to exist in this room, alongside all these toasts and blessings. Because without truth, what are we really celebrating? The silence that followed was different now. Not tense with hostility, but heavy with reflection. People shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. A few relatives avoided Daniel's gaze altogether. Lily, to her credit, didn't shrink. She stepped forward slightly, her brow furrowed, her lips pressed together. "Eliza, is that true?" she asked softly, her voice carrying just enough to be heard. Daniel tried to pull her back. "Lily, don't." She shook him off, her eyes locked on me. "Is it?" I met her gaze unwavering. Every word. Her shoulders stiffened, and though she didn't speak further, the doubt etched itself plainly on her face. It was small, but it was something. Someone in the back cleared their throat. It was my uncle, a man usually more interested in his food than family drama. He stood slowly, glass in hand. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I've been to a lot of gatherings in my life, but I've never seen someone speak with that much honesty at one. Maybe we should all listen." That broke the tension like a hammer to glass. More murmurs spread, some agreeing, some disapproving, but all engaged. Daniel's mother rose from her seat, her face flushed. "This is highly inappropriate," she snapped. "We don't air dirty laundry at family events." I turned to her, my voice calm but firm. "With respect, Mrs. Matthews, it wasn't me who hung my heartbreak on a banner. It wasn't me who turned a private betrayal into a public spectacle. I didn't want this stage, but it was built around me." Her mouth opened, then closed again. For once, she had no ready retort. I took another steadying breath, the microphone warm now in my hand. I loved Daniel. Deeply. Enough to forgive the late nights, the broken promises, the times he seemed distant. I thought it was stress or work, or maybe even me. But it wasn't. It was this. I paused, letting my words hang in the air. "I don't want anyone's sympathy," I continued. "But I won't let myself be erased either. Tonight, I choose to stand here, not as a victim, but as someone who deserves to be seen. And if my story makes even one person here think twice about the importance of honesty and love, then maybe this night isn't wasted." The room was utterly still. Even the clink of glasses had stopped. It was then that something unexpected happened. My Aunt Ruth, the same one who had comforted me earlier, stood up. She walked toward me, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. Without hesitation, she placed a hand on my shoulder and faced the crowd. "She's right," Ruth said firmly. "We've all watched Daniel make excuses. We've all seen the distance. And I, for one, have heard Eliza's name in this family for years. She's not some stranger crashing a party. She's been part of our lives. Pretending otherwise is cruel." Her voice cracked slightly, but her conviction was unshakable. "We can toast to new beginnings, yes. But let's not do it by burying the truth of what came before." Her words struck a chord. Heads nodded. Even those who clearly sided with Daniel, and his mother looked uncomfortable. Daniel finally stormed forward, his voice sharp. "Enough. This is supposed to be about Lily and me. Not you, Eliza. You're making a scene." I turned to him, meeting his anger with calm. You made the scene, Daniel. I just stepped into the light. That earned a smattering of quiet applause, hesitant, but real. A cousin clapped once, then stopped unsure. Another followed louder. Then someone else. Soon, the sound grew, scattered but unmistakable. Not for Daniel. Not for Lily. For me. For truth. Lily's hand slipped from Daniel's grasp. She didn't say a word, but her expression spoke volumes. The smile she had worn so confidently earlier was gone, replaced by uncertainty, even fear. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I simply placed the microphone back on the stand, the quiet applause still echoing, and whispered almost to myself, "That's all I needed to say." The room felt changed, not entirely on my side, but not blindly celebrating anymore either. A crack had been made in the facade, and light had slipped through. I stepped away, my heart pounding but lighter somehow, as though speaking had lifted a weight I hadn't realized was crushing me. For the first time that night, I wasn't standing in Daniel's shadow. I was standing in my own truth. And the room, whether they liked it or not, had heard it. The applause faded, leaving a raw stillness in the room. My hand brushed against the fabric of my dress as I stepped away from the microphone, my body trembling with adrenaline. I could still feel dozens of eyes fixed on me. But the weight that had been crushing my chest just minutes earlier had loosened. For the first time all night, I could breathe. I didn't wait for Daniel to recover his composure, or for Gloria to spit out another insult. I turned slowly and deliberately, letting my heels click against the polished hardwood floor. The sound was steady, intentional, like a drumbeat marking each step of my decision. "Where are you going?" Daniel's voice cut across the silence, sharp and panicked. I stopped just long enough to glance over my shoulder. He was standing there, his hand outstretched toward me, but his face betrayed him. The calm confidence he had worn like armor all evening was gone, replaced by desperation. "Someplace where the truth matters," I replied quietly. A murmur spread through the guests again, but I didn't let it pull me back. I kept walking. As I reached the hallway, Aunt Ruth caught up with me, her hand brushing my arm. "Eliza," she said softly, her eyes glistening. "You don't have to leave like this. You've been so brave. Let them sit with what you said." I squeezed her hand, grateful. "I have to, Ruth. Staying would mean giving them the satisfaction of watching me crumble. I'm not going to give them that." Her lips pressed into a tight line, then she nodded. "You're stronger than they realize." I gave her the faintest smile before continuing toward the front door. The hallway was lined with coats, purses, and the faint smell of perfume and roasted meat. I brushed against the wall as I moved, steadying myself, not from weakness but from the flood of emotions that rushed through me. Anger, grief, relief, all tangled into something I couldn't quite name. At the door I hesitated. My hand rested on the knob, cool and familiar, yet heavy with the knowledge that once I crossed that threshold, nothing would ever be the same. Behind me, I heard footsteps. "Eliza, wait." It wasn't Daniel. It was Lily. I froze, torn between the urge to ignore her and the need to see her face one last time. Slowly I turned. Her eyes were wide, filled with uncertainty. The confidence she had radiated earlier was gone. And for the first time, she looked young, fragile, almost lost. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear I didn't know." Something in her voice told me she meant it. And though I wanted to be angry, I couldn't bring myself to lash out. She wasn't my enemy. She was just another piece of Daniel's long game. "I believe you," I said, my voice steady. "But believing you doesn't erase what he did. To both of us." Her lips parted, but no words came. Finally she nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she murmured. I nodded once, then turned back to the door. "Don't be sorry to me. Just don't let him build your life on the same lies." And with that I opened the door. The cold night air rushed in, sharp against my skin. It smelled of damp earth and faint wood smoke from a neighbor's chimney. It wrapped around me like a cleansing shiver, carrying away the staleness of that crowded house. I stepped outside, the sound of laughter and hushed whispers fading behind me as the door clicked shut. For the first time that evening, I was alone. The line of cars stretched along the curb, their metal frames glinting under the glow of the street lamps. My breath came out in little white clouds as I walked, each exhale proof that I was still here, still standing. With each step toward my car, I felt lighter. My chest no longer carried the crushing weight of secrets. My shoulders were no longer burdened by waiting for Daniel to choose me. I had chosen myself. Still, when I reached my car, I hesitated. My hand hovered over the door handle, and I found myself staring at the reflection in the window. My face looked tired, pale, but there was something else too, something I hadn't seen in a long time. Strength. I slid into the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel, letting the silence of the car surround me. My phone buzzed in my purse, no doubt texts from Karen, maybe even from Daniel, but I didn't reach for it. Instead, I sat there for a moment, letting the reality sink in. I had walked into that house carrying years of broken promises, hidden shame, and unanswered questions. I was walking away carrying only myself. And for once, that was enough. The drive home was quiet, the roads mostly empty. Streetlights flickered past in a rhythm, like punctuation marks in a story I had finally finished writing. My mind wandered to the years I had spent with Daniel. The dinners, the road trips, the small jokes only we knew. Each memory hurt, like pressing against a bruise, but none of them had the power to break me anymore. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the ache had dulled into something else. Acceptance. I cut the engine and sat in the stillness, my house dark and waiting. It struck me that for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for Daniel to follow me in, to carry his jacket inside, to drop his keys on the counter. The emptiness was sharp, but it was honest. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and let the quiet wrap around me like a blanket. Later, as I curled up on the couch with the same navy dress still clinging to me, I thought about what Ruth had said. You're stronger than they realize. Maybe she was right. Strength wasn't about winning Daniel back or proving myself to his family. It was about walking out of that room with my dignity intact. And that was exactly what I had done. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself a small smile. Because even though I had lost a relationship, I had gained something far more valuable, myself.